All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Marty Rubin. I will be presenting to you, see how all the chimes are coming in. I will be presenting to you this morning the Professional Service Tools Library used with Microsoft Dynamics GP. I've got a title here of the presentation called How to Change Unchangeable IDs in Dynamics GP. The Professional Service Tools Library is a bit more extensive than just simply changing those key IDs in certain tables in the database. And so what we're going to do this morning, as I move to the next slide, well, before I do that, I will quickly just let everybody know we're going to be going through all of the professional service tools that are available, both GP10 and 2010. There's some additional ones in 2010. So there's going to be a lot of slides. I'll be inundating you with PowerPoint. There won't be any demos because we are limited to 1 hour. And I want to leave some time at the end for questions. So, next slide. So what we're going to cover is the very first bullet point on here is that the Professional Service Tools Library is now free. Yep, I'm not making that up. It is 100% free from Microsoft. This is a very recent change. In fact, you can see I had listed this as being starting in mid-March. We're not quite at mid-March, and I've already obtained a couple of master registration keys for some of our clients. And it very quickly and easily unlocks all of the professional service tools. So as you're sitting and listening and learning about the professional service tools, think about your business, how it is today, some things you may be struggling with, how the business may be changing in the near future, and where you may be able to take advantage of one or more of these tools since, again, they will be free. And it's very easy to obtain the keys from Microsoft, very easy to install. We're going to briefly talk about why Professional Service Tools Library, PSTL, pronounced pistol, some important prerequisites to using pistol, and then we're going to spend the vast majority of the time going through each of the tools. Some of them may warrant more time to fully understand what they do, but again, we're limited this morning, so we'll leave time for questions, and then certainly any follow-up afterwards. There is interest in potentially using any of the tools that I'm presenting this morning. And then we have our question period at the end. By the way, I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Everybody on that end is currently on mute, and so I'll be going through this presentation, and then I will open it up at the end for questions. So as you're sitting through this, jot down your questions, and then we'll try to fit everybody in at the end. Okay, so what does pistol, and I'll just use the term pistol just for to make it a little quicker. What does it offer? Well, you can make changes to critical data, changes that wouldn't otherwise be able to be made because there are key fields that get locked down in the database because they prevail throughout the database. For example, a vendor ID when you create a vendor. You can consolidate and merge data. Probably half of the tools are combine tools, merge tools, change tools for that critical data. And it ensures your data integrity. So as opposed to going in directly to the database and trying to identify every table that contains a record with a particular value and trying to change them all, that's been built out in these tools so the integrity of your database stays intact. And you'll get some increased productivity and efficiency from executing these tools if there is a need for it. For example, vendors or customers could over time tend to include duplicates, sometimes triplicates, multiple vendors that really are the same vendor. And AP might have a difficult time determining at some point, well, which is the correct vendor to use on a transaction, may end up using multiple ones on different transactions and trying to inquire, run reports, etc. Could be a challenge. So that's one area where you can increase productivity and enhance your efficiency in the system. Some important prerequisites to using the professional service tools. In, I will say, all cases, you're going to want to back up databases on which you're running these tools. Some of the tools will prompt to make a backup. Some of the tools will not, and they'll just assume that the proper backups were done. So again, as a rule, whenever any of these tools are executed, you will want to make a backup of your database. And generally speaking, only one user should be logged into Dynamics GP anytime a tool is being executed or run or processed. There are some tools that don't require other users to be logged out. I've listed 3 of them, and if I remember correctly, these may be the only 3. That's the item reconciler, the toolkit, and shortcuts copy, and we'll look at each of those individually here shortly. Also, to execute the majority of these tools requires the use of the system administrator login. There may be some other prerequisites that are unique to each tool. These are the main ones that you'd want to keep in mind. Okay, what tools are available? As mentioned earlier, the tools that will modify existing key data, combine some of those records, make up probably about half, maybe a little bit more than half of the available tools. There is a validate and import function available for those types of tools, and what that is, and we'll talk about that a little more in detail, that's using spreadsheets where you may need to change in bulk, say customer IDs. You want to make a change to those, and in one column you list the old customer IDs or existing. The new customer IDs will be listed in the second column, and there's a process within the tool that will validate that data, and then once validated, we'll import it and make the change and produce a report with that change. The tools are compatible with all of the core Dynamics GP modules. So all the tools work with updating data in the general ledger, receivables and payables management, sales order processing, purchase order processing, inventory, bank rec, payroll, bill of materials, and multi-currency. But each tool has its own list of other modules that it is compatible with, depending on what function it's serving. And if there is an interest in any of the tools and we need to identify what modules are compatible with it, then that list can be provided. I just didn't, it was somewhat extensive and didn't include it in this presentation. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the professional service tools are available in GP version 10 and 2010, and if you take a look at each of the screenshots here, you'll see a lot of them are the same. It might be a little bit fuzzy to look at and know precisely which ones have changed or are new for 2010. I think there's one in GP10 that is not in 2010, and I'll point that out. There's quite a few more miscellaneous tools that were created in GP 2010. And for those of you that may have chimed in a couple of minutes late, I do want to just remind that these professional service tools are now available at no charge, completely free to users of Dynamics GP version 10, 2010, and of course future releases. Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat of the presentation. We're going to go through each of the professional service tools that are available. So here's where you want to really think about your business, how you're using Dynamics GP, and really start to think about whether or not any of these tools would be able to help with the productivity and efficiency improvements. So this first section of tools is going to be the system tools. The first one is the database disabler. And what this one does, it allows the SA user, and as mentioned earlier, SA is going to be required as the login for the vast majority of these tools. The SA user can disable any of the company databases. And what that does, if executed, will remove that company option from the login window. It doesn't delete the company database, just users can't log into it. Very simple tool to use, and it would be used if you want to retain information in a database, but not allow any access to it or changes to it. And the benefit of using this tool for that purpose is it's simpler than removing the access for each user. Especially if you have a large number of users, you'd have to go in and remove the company access by user. So this is one place to do it one time. And again, if I'm going to go through every tool, I'm going to go through them very quickly again because of the time constraint. So just jot down your notes and questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end, and then certainly we'll be available to follow up afterwards. Okay. This next tool is called the Shortcuts Copy, and what this tool does, it will copy shortcut options from one user ID to another, simply clicking the copy button. And something like this is very effective and useful if a user has a shortcut available that's a macro, which could take some time to create. So you could simply click in the copy from user ID, select the user ID from which you want to copy, and the copy to the user ID, and the shortcuts will be there for the copy to user ID. And you'll see quite a few notes on each of these where it prompts to back up your database. So this is one of those you want to just back up your database. It may not seem like a very invasive type of tool or process, but we always want to be safe and make sure we have a backup. Okay, the next system tool is called Toolkit. This one, not commonly used, I believe, in the past. Scripts have been run against databases to execute some of these things. A tool was built. So what this one does, it'll rebuild your GL00105 table, which is your account index master table. Also recreate dex procs, dexterity, stored procedures, and indexes. It will recreate tables and check identities of tables. Really more of a technical use tool than something that is functional in nature. Go to the next slide as I continue. This one, this will show got a little screenshot here showing how you can either recreate your tables either based on a series or a specific table. And when I say series, financial, sales, purchasing, etc. If there is a checkbox down there on the left towards the bottom, recreate data for selected tables. So if there is a need to use a tool like this and you don't check that box and you're recreating a table, any data in that table would be lost if that box is left unchecked. So just one critical area in this tool I want to point out. If you are recreating tables that has data in them, the process could take a good bit of time depending on the size of the table. The login user generator, this tool appears to only be available for GP10. This is, I think, the only tool that is available in GP10, but doesn't look like it's available in GP2010. And what this one does, and I believe it's because in 2010, the change in the way user accounts and logins, I'd have to look further into why it was excluded from 2010. But what it does, if you're still on GP10, it'll recreate all the logins and users based on all the users that are set up in the system, and is very useful for recreating the users and logins when you restore a database either to a new server or a separate test server. And like many of the other tools, you have to be logged in as SA to run it, and this is a very simple one. Just click the process button and from the database you're logged into, and the users will be created. All right, this next system tool is called the Menu Inquiry Utility. This is just an inquiry utility. This doesn't update anything in the database. It's really just to gather more information about the menus in GP. It allows you to view all the commands on the menus, whether they're hidden or not. If you look at the screenshot, the menu groups on the left should look familiar when you're in GP, and then we've got the Dynamics GP menu highlighted. So on the right, the categories and commands, this lists the available items from within that menu. So the process to display a menu command is simply choose a menu group, select the command from the list on the right. In this case, we've got user and company. And then the command properties are at the bottom, and there's an enabled, checked, and visible checkbox. If enabled is checked, that means the command is enabled. If the checked box is checked, it means the command's been activated. And if it's visible, that means it's visible and accessible. And there's one other function here. If you want to open the actual window to see what window is brought up from this menu and command item, there's a little gear icon, which I've expanded a little bit, next to the tag number on the left, and that'll bring up the window. And it may look like you can check and uncheck those boxes, enabled, checked, and visible. You can't from here. Again, it's just an inquiry. And I believe this is the last system tool. This one's called Update User Date Utility. This one is only available in GP 2010. And what it will do, and you'll notice on the screenshot on here, there's a checkbox next to the blue check mark. The blue check marks, by the way, mean that all the professional service tools are registered and available to be used. Some of the tools create additional functionality within GP, this being one of them. There's another checkbox. So what you do, you check the checkbox, and the tool will automatically update the user date to the next date at midnight each night if Dynamics GP is open and being used at that time. So if anybody's working that late, and it happens, probably more often than we like it to, but it does, and at midnight a pop-up dialog box comes up that says you want to change the user date to the next day. In this case, if you check it, it will automatically change it to the next day. There is one other prerequisite, and that is in the Dexini file, the suppress date change dialog box needs to be set to true. So So moving on to financial tools. This is a probably one of the more popular and often used tools. In fact, just used this one recently as last week before, something like that. The account modifier combiner tool, where you can change your existing account numbers to new account numbers and combine existing accounts. The difference between combiner and modifier: combiner works where both accounts already exist in the database. Modifier is where you're creating a new account using the tool. It's the same window. The system will just know, okay, if you put an account number in the first field and you want to change it to a new account number, you're modifying it. Okay. So account modifier, this just goes through in a little more detail how to modify an account. And you can change a single account, and this is one of those tools where you can change a whole range of accounts, and we're going to go through that on the next slide. It will make changes throughout the database on all open and historical data without risk of losing any data. That's the data integrity, staying intact through use of these tools. And once you've modified an account, then you have the option to combine accounts after the initial changes have been made. And like many of the other tools, a report will be produced to show you the accounts that were modified and combined. To change a range of accounts, you simply select the range to be changed, and then populate at the bottom the field type. There's a current value and new value. Now this screenshot that I included on here, I don't want it to create any confusion. The starting and ending account numbers in the top, in the first segment, have zeros. So it's we need to actually change those ranges. Certainly if there's a need to execute this tool, IDOS will be available to assist with that, and we make sure that it's being executed properly, and we're making sure that the right account numbers are, the account ranges are created. Okay. Once the changes are made, you do not have the option to combine accounts on a range, and a report will be produced. The combiner will combine accounts into a single account. Works very similarly to account modifier. One key, and this may seem obvious, but you can't combine a balance sheet with a P&L account and vice versa. You wouldn't want to do that anyway, generally speaking. So, but I want to point that out anyway. Okay, from a spreadsheet. This is where we talked about the validate and import process. So to change a range or multiple accounts, perhaps not a range or a segment in an account. By the way, we're not, when we're using this tool, we're not changing the format of the account structure. We're just changing the values. That may have seemed obvious. I just wanted to point that out. So what you do, you enter your existing accounts in the first column, new accounts in the second. Make sure you include dashes in your account numbers. Save it as a text file. Choose import in the select by field, and that's the radio button to the right in the select by on that screenshot there. The validate and modify buttons will appear. You validate first to make sure that the current account numbers already exist in the database. They have to exist. And then modify after you've validated in order to change or combine the accounts from the spreadsheet. And I'm looking at the time, and I'm looking at my number of slides I want to get through, so I may speed it up a bit here. I don't want to speed it up too much, and I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. This one's a very simple tool, checkbook modifier. If you have a need to change a checkbook ID, simply put in the starting checkbook ID, the existing one, an ending checkbook ID, and convert it. And again, it prevails throughout the database. very simple tool, maybe one not commonly used, but if there's a need for it, it's very quick. Okay. Fiscal period modifier, another financial tool. You can change fiscal year definitions and reset the data in open and history tables. It does not support changes to months and or days in closed years. And if anybody out there is using the contract administration module, you need to bill all your invoices and recognize revenue before using this tool. To use it, you simply choose a setup periods, create the new fiscal year definitions, and remove the previous fiscal year definitions. If you have a previously closed year that is open under the new fiscal year definitions, select the year from the drop-down list, and then select process. To align your history and summary data, remove the old GL summary data. I suspect there may be some additional questions or clarification about this tool, and we'll see if we can fit those in at the end. Otherwise, certainly we'll be able to address those after the presentation. GL Master Record Triggers is another fairly popular and effective tool. So if you have multiple databases, multiple companies, and you want to keep your chart of accounts in sync, you can identify a master database, and when an account is created in a master database, it can be replicated to one or more databases. You'll also notice in the screenshot that I've got vendors and customers. So in purchasing and sales, the same master record trigger exists, and it's the same, essentially the same tool, just the different records. Okay. So for the GL master record triggers, here you select your master database where the source of the data will be, which database or databases you're going to want the data replicated to, and then you would, vendors is checked right now in the screenshot, but you want to check accounts, and then anytime a record is, or an account, say, is added to, in this case, the TWO database, it will also be created in the test database. We're moving into the sales tools. The customer combiner. This tool will allow you to combine a customer number into another customer number without loss of data. You have to be logged in as SA, and this one you will be prompted to make a backup, and a report will be produced showing the combined customer numbers. This is one where if you have, you may want to look into using this tool if you have excess duplicates or even more than two of each customer. You can start combining data into the one that you want to keep, just to clean up your customer master database. And again, we're about halfway through the presentation of the professional service tools, and I'm not quite halfway through my slides, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. Customer modifier. In this case, this is like the checkbook changer. You have a starting customer number and a new customer number. So you may just want to change the customer IDs, not necessarily combine them, but just make changes to them. There could be good justification for wanting to do that. I know the situation that I'm working with a client right now where there's a definite need to do something like this. The name modifier, you select the customer number, the name will come up, and then you can enter a new name. Well, the customer name in the customer card is open to changing. What we want to keep in mind as far as the tool goes, this prevails throughout the database, whereas if you just go into the customer card and change the name, that's on the master record for future transactions against that customer record. All right, as mentioned earlier, the GL had the master record triggers. This is the receivables master record triggers. So I'll go through this one fairly quickly. Again, the screenshot just has vendors checked. It would be the same. You create a customer address in one database, your master database, and that could be replicated to one or more additional databases. The difference here, you just want to check the customer's checkbox. And this slide just talks about the same master record triggers that we talked about. Again, just check customers. Okay, receivables management transaction unapply. So with this tool, you are able to unapply documents that are in the history table. Move those records back to the open table, even if discounts or write-offs are associated with the document. And then reapply those records as needed. And if discounts or write-offs do exist, there'll be a journal entry created in the GL to handle those. And this tool does provide a good alternative to removing history and re-entering that data if records were applied incorrectly. I think this is also a fairly popular tool to have available and to use. Okay, to use it, just choose your customer ID, select the document numbers or dates to be unapplied, and then a report will be produced to show the items that will be unapplied, to be available to reapply to different documents. Okay, salesperson modifier, very simple tool. Simply enter your starting salesperson ID and the new salesperson ID, which you want the existing one to be changed to. Make a backup, it'll produce a report. Very simple, straightforward tool. Sales order processing customer item lookup. You can store customer-specific ordering history, last invoice date, and last price used, and view that information from within the SOP entry window and sales item detail. This is one of those tools that modifies existing features in Dynamics GP. And you'll see in this screenshot what the tool did by activating it under the additional menu. It created an additional menu item to look up data. Maybe you see it clearer here. Okay. On this screenshot, this is where you see the checkbox pointed to the customer item lookup. This is one that's activated, and you just have to check the box to make that feature available in GP. Then we can go into the SOP setup window, and underneath the additional menu, now create initial lookup data. And depending on how much line item data exists, could take a little bit of time. And so this process just creates the data. Okay, and then, and you have to be logged in as SA for that one. And then the new customer item lookup window is available from that SOP entry and SOP item detail windows. And so this is a screenshot of the additional data that's available. Okay, another sales tool, a territory modifier. This one works similarly to the other modifier tools like checkbook, like salesperson ID. You're simply changing an ID, a key field in the database, to a new ID, and that change prevails throughout the database. Data integrity is maintained. You have to be logged in as SA, and we'll need to make a backup of your database. And a report is produced, so you can see the modified territories. Similar to some of the other tools, there's a territory combiner, where, and this could be very realistic, where territories do change, and you combine them potentially with other existing territories, sales territories. So that there is a tool available for that as well. SA, backup database, and reports. You're going to see a lot of repetition as far as needing to be logged in as SA and backing up your database. The SOP PO number check. This is I think consumes about 4 or 5 slides, so bear with me. I'll try to go through it fairly quickly and hope that this will make sense. This one's new for GP 2010, and what this one does, it checks the customer PO number field for duplicates as data is entered into the field on both SOP entry, SOP customer detail entry windows. And in the screenshot I've got on here, you can select to check the database for each type, each SOP type, which is your quote, order, invoice, return, back order, etc. Tables will be checked for duplicate customer POs for only those SOP types that you've checked on this window. Okay, you select the table to be checked. It's either going to be a work table, a history table, or both. This screenshot shows both. It's checking for work and history tables. That is the default. The next column over in the screenshot is check on UI, the user interface. So if in the user interface you want the system to check whether duplicate PO numbers should be identified, you can do that. But an example on a return document, you could have multiple returns for a single PO, so you may not want to check for duplicates on returns. You can set the required checkbox. If you want the customer PO number to be a required field on the sales transaction entry window, you can check that box. Then you've got warning types. If you do nothing, there's no message or warning. You'll notice that there's no UI checking is not required either. It's just going through a check of the database, for example, on the screenshot on quotes. You can set the warning to just warn only, which will give the user a message. You say, okay, there's a duplicate PO, that's great, I'll click OK, move past it. Warn and ask, which is what this screenshot is displaying for the rest of these that are required and do check the user interface. Here it will ask the yes if the message pops up. There's a duplicate. You can select yes. That means the PO will be accepted. If you select no, then the user will have to enter a different PO. And then there's a display option to show where a window will open up to show you where the PO number was found, the duplicate PO. There's also a warn and reject message. If you click OK, you're going to have to enter a different PO number. And this one doesn't really give the user an option. And you can set a password. The next, the last column on the screenshot is warn and password. Will display a message, and the user has to know the password and enter it to override whatever message comes up. And you can put in custom messages to be displayed, and those might be hard to see where they're at on the screenshot. It's actually just below the SOP type. It says message, and there's a few that have some custom messages there. One other thing about the SOP PO number check is you can set customer exceptions. There is a window that comes up under Tools, System Setup Customer Exception, and you can check where, if you check it, the customer PO number, let's see, it says marked customers will not have customer PO number in SOP entry required. I wanted to make sure that was clear. So the tool, you could set it to make it required, and then you can select specific customers where you don't want it required for any reason. Kind of an involved tool. I'm sure there'll be some questions about that one as well. Inventory site combiner. I'm actually at the point now where I think I'm going to go through some of the more repetitious tools a little quicker, because this one is similar to a lot of the other ones, but you can combine inventory sites. And the reason why I'm going to go through some of these quicker is because I think they really will start to make sense. And there's a couple of other tools I want to make sure I get to before our hour is up. Site modifier is another one that is very straightforward. Starting and ending site IDs to change those. And the description modifier. This one does have a little more detail to it. You enter the starting number. You'll want to back up your database. And you'll be able to get a report with the modified item descriptions. Actually, sorry, it's the item number combiner that's more detailed. The other one was straightforward. Okay, in the item number combiner, old item numbers are removed from the system. If you're using bill of materials or manufacturing bill of materials, you can't combine parent objects. Only the child objects that make up those bill of materials can be combined. You have to be logged in as essays. A couple of other notes about users of manufacturing. You have to post any saved issue or reverse issue pick documents. And then there's also a note about a potential difficulty with entering a reverse issue transaction for combined items. I put that on here. If you all are, anybody out there is using manufacturing and sees a potential need for the item number combiner and wants to quickly read through this, I'm going to switch slides here shortly. So to combine an item number, you just enter the starting item number and then the item number you want to combine it to. Choose convert and then view the report. So the process is straightforward. There's just some items you want to be aware of prior to executing it. Here's an item number modifier. You can change an existing item number to a new item number, very similar to several of the other tools, modifier tools that we've talked about. The item reconciler is, it allows you to reconcile inventory. And yes, there is a reconcile inventory function in GP. The main difference with this tool is that it will only select those items that need reconciling when it does the reconciliation, which will increase performance, system performance. So you simply check the ID inventory checkbox and hit reconcile. We've got about 25 more slides to get through in the next 15 minutes. 1099 modifier, very, very popular tool, very useful tool. You can update 1099 amounts for vendors who were not set up as 1099 vendors for all or a portion of any given year. Keep in mind it only modifies records that are already paid and should be 1099 records for the year that you select. And if you have any work or open transactions that have not been paid but were entered or posted while the vendor was not set up as a 1099 vendor, those won't be changed. That's an important point on this one. So in that situation, you want to execute the tool the next year prior to printing the 1099 reports to be sure the work and open records paid in the new year get updated. Okay, to update the amounts, set the vendor up as 1099. Once marked as 1099, open the tool. Select if you want to print the report or process and print. Select the calendar year in which you want to make those changes. You'll be prompted to back up your database, and then you can view the modified 1099 records. Remember, you did all the, on the previous slide, you did all the upfront work, setting up the vendors, and you knew which items had been paid without them being flagged as 1099. So this process will update those transactions. I'm going to go through this one in less than 15 seconds. This is the payables management master record triggers, similar to the receivables and GL to replicate data across databases. Payables management minimum check tool allows you to set a minimum for your payables checks within the select checks process. Just note the process occurs after the payment vouchers have already been created. You simply go into the professional service tools, mark the second checkbox. This is another one of those that activates additional functionality in GP. Then you open your Select Payables Checks window, and to change the minimum check amount, you can choose Additional Set Minimum Check Amount. That became available when you checked that box on the Professional Service Tools. The screenshot to the right here, you set the minimum amount and turn it on and off by using, just simply checking that box to use that minimum check amount. Select Checks Combiner. You can consolidate checks to match the same vendor when users are appending to an existing checks batch. It's useful if users are oftentimes building batches for payables checks, and they select different document or date ranges. There's another one that creates additional functionality in GP. Simply mark the second checkbox to have the arrow pointing to next to Select Checks Combiner to activate it. And then once activated, if a check exists for a vendor, when checks are rebuilt, new amounts will be added to the existing check. Keep in mind it only applies if the one check per field is set to vendor in the Select Payables Checks window. Vendor Combiner. I'm going to go through this one quickly. This is similar to the Customer Combiner. So you simply select your starting vendor, combine into an existing vendor, which becomes your main. All the data will be moved to that into vendor ID. So you can clean up those duplicate vendors that are out there. And let's just go through a little more detail. It actually talks, this slide talks about if you have a vendor ID that's tied to an employee record through project accounting, the employee modifier code will automatically execute to keep the employee and vendor records in sync. Okay. Now, the second note is if you execute a vendor combine and both vendor IDs are linked to employee IDs, you'll get an error, and the records will not be changed. You can combine the vendor IDs, but not the employee IDs. Okay, vendor modifier. Again, another quick and simple one to change vendor IDs to something different. Got about 15 slides left. I think we're going to get there. Vendor name modifier works similar to the customer name modifier, where you can change it here using this tool, and it will prevail throughout the database. Purchase order processing cost defaulter exists in 2010. By the way, where I didn't mention anything specific to 2010 versus 10, that means the tool is available in both. This one's just 2010. We could specify a default cost for a purchase order document. So select the cost you want to default from the purchase order processing entry window. The last invoice cost would typically default from cards, inventory, vendors. And then here, either the current or standard cost will default based on your selection using this tool. Employee modifier. Another quick one, just changing your employee IDs to new IDs. This, all right, the certified payroll report. There's quite a few slides related to this one. We're just about wrapped up here. For those of you out there, and I don't know if anybody would have any requirements around certified payroll for government-funded construction projects, you could use a certified payroll report and add a project number to the employee's hourly transactions and track them on a per-project basis. The tool will also capture information posted from the timesheet entry window, project accounting timesheet entry. You can print the transactions on a weekly report and view the employees, departments, job titles, and pay codes per project. Now, I'm going to go through the next few slides fairly quickly. They do relate to certified payroll. Again, if you do have a need for this, then certainly connect afterwards and work with you on getting this one working for you. This is just going through the certified payroll report setup. and you can see you mark the checkbox next to Certified Payroll Report. And anytime you hit a checkbox there in Professional Service Tools, that just creates additional functionality within GP. Then you have an alternate modified reports window. You're going to open that window and select the ID for whom you want to view the certified payroll report, and then you're going to want to select the technical service tools from the product drop-down list, which is in that screenshot. Okay, select the Windows from the type drop-down. I'm sorry, it's in the drop-down. It's in the field there. It says product, but it's also in the payroll transaction entry expansion. So you're going to click that box in the expansion and then hit save. The next screen here shows you how to create a shortcut for the certified payroll report. So we won't go through too much detail there, but just show you that that can and is typically what is done. Okay, and then the next slide here shows where you'd actually be able to enter job numbers on the payroll transaction entry. Okay, and bolded here, it's only active for transactions that are hourly, overtime, or double time payroll types. And also keep in mind there's no validation for the job number itself. It can be up to 15 characters, so you just have that entered in. And then to print the certified payroll report, here are all the steps. Open the certified payroll window, mark all jobs are in a range, and there may be a bit more detail than we have time to really go through at this point, because I keep looking at the time, and I know we're getting close to the end, and I really did want to leave time for questions. And just say if there is no time for questions, you could certainly reach me, and we can get any questions answered via email afterwards. All right, now we're getting into the miscellaneous tools. Fixed asset modifier is under miscellaneous tools, and this is the section where there's 3 or 4 more tools in GP 2010. This one exists in both, and this will actually just allow you to take an existing asset ID, create a new asset ID, and actually list the tables in fixed assets that get updated with this tool. There's a minimum PO receipt number. This one actually did exist in GP10, but it was listed as a miscellaneous tool. In GP 2010, this is considered a purchasing tool. They just moved the location of it. It adds the ability to prevent purchase order processing from defaulting to the next PO number or receipt number. And again, there's probably a good bit of detail on this one, and because of time, if there seems to be any interest in digging deeper into what this tool can offer, certainly we'll get connected after the presentation. There's a few more here. The default add item for pop and SOP, this is available only in GP 2010. It automatically adds, or rather marks, the add item selection in the options menu for these 4 windows listed here. That add item checkbox is by default normally unmarked, but this will default it to marked, and it can still be checked or unchecked, just as normal process, but this defaults it to being checked. Document date, verify. I'll try to go through this one quickly. Mostly this just lists the windows where it's available, but basically what it does is it verifies that the document date that's being entered is either within a valid fiscal period or in an open period, not closed. So if there's a need to control the document date being within a particular fiscal period, this tool will offer that functionality. Decimal place tool also new for GP 2010. When this one is activated, payables and payroll checks will have the check amount in words truncated to 2 decimals. And this would come in handy if currencies in GP were changed to more than 2 decimals. Does happen. Modifying the check amount in words on the check can't be done in Report Writer, which is why this tool was created, because the actual check amount itself can be changed in Report Writer. We are close. Company Copy Tool. This one is also new for 2010, and really there's a lot of disclaimers and be careful and all that stuff on this one. Make a backup, and caps and exclamation points. There's no prompt to make a backup. What it does, it allows the setup and report option information in one company to be copied to another. And you can choose the modules, the specific modules, to be set up in report options, or select all. Here's a screenshot for the company copy tool that has all the modules listed below. There's also checked for all the modules. And there are quite a few specific requirements depending on the module data to be copied. So we just want to make sure we effectively plan prior to executing the tool. And with that, I've left us with about 3 minutes for questions. So I am going to open the floor for questions. Okay, those are good questions. If there's no other questions, then I thank you all for your time. I hope this was some valuable information for you. If you have an interest in obtaining the master key for your account, then you can get in touch with whoever your primary contact is at IBIS, or just send information to this email address listed on this final screenshot here, PowerPoint, and we'll get back to you on that. Sure. Thank you all.
Thank you.